Everyone knows Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press in 1440. It is the single most important moment in the history of human communication. We are told that before this German goldsmith, books were rare, handwritten treasures chained to monastery desks, and that after him, knowledge exploded, fueling the Renaissance, the Reformation, and the scientific revolution. It's a perfect story. A lone genius in a workshop in Mainz, changing the world forever. But there's a problem. China had been printing books for 600 years before Gutenberg was even born. By the time the first Gutenberg Bible left the press, half a world away, millions of books had already been printed, sold, and read. This is no history. And today, we're going to find out why the greatest invention in history was actually a 600-year-old secret. If you open any history textbook, the narrative is remarkably consistent. In the mid-15th century, Europe was waking up, but literacy was a luxury. A single Bible could take a scribe an entire year to copy by hand. It cost as much as a house. Then comes Johannes Gutenberg. He wasn't just a printer, he was a master of metals. He realized that if you carved individual letters out of metal, you could rearrange them to print any page you wanted. This was movable type. It was fast, it was precise, and most importantly, it was repeatable. In 1455, he produced the Gutenberg Bible. It was a miracle of engineering. For the first time, the second copy of a book didn't cost a year of labor. It cost a few hours of work. I grew up believing this was the moment the light of knowledge was turned on. I accepted it without question. It makes sense, right? We see the results everywhere. The modern world is built on the foundation of that workshop in Mainz. But as I started digging into the evidence of global media history, I found a study that changed everything. The miracle of 1440 wasn't an invention at all. It was an adaptation. The first crack in the myth appeared when archaeologists looked east. In 1900, in a hidden cave in Dunhuang, China, a secret library was discovered. Among the treasures was a document called the Diamond Sutra. At the very end, there is a colophon, a printer's note. It says, "Reverently made for universal free distribution by Wang Jie on the 11th of the 5th moon of the 9th year of Xian Tong." That date translates to May 11th, 868 AD. This wasn't a handwritten scroll. It was printed. The Chinese had perfected woodblock printing. They would carve an entire page into a single block of pear or jujube wood. It was slower to set up than movable type, but once the block was carved, you could print thousands of copies. By the 10th century, the Chinese government was mass printing the entire Buddhist canon, over 5,000 volumes. I started to wonder, if they had mass production in 868, why do we call Gutenberg the father of printing? Maybe it's because wood blocks are static? You can't rearrange the letters. But then I found something even more surprising. Around 1041 AD, 400 years before Gutenberg, a Chinese commoner named Bi Sheng invented movable type. He used baked clay. He carved individual characters, fired them in a kiln, and set them in iron frames using wax. So China had printing. They even had movable type. So why did the world wait for a German goldsmith? To understand the missing link, we have to look at Korea. While the Chinese were using wood and clay, the Koreans took it to the next level: metal. This is the jikji. It was printed in 1377. That is 78 years before Gutenberg's Bible. And unlike the Diamond Sutra, the jikji was made with movable metal type. The Koreans used advanced casting methods, the same high-end techniques used for fine jewelry, bells, and coins. Some type was produced using lost wax casting, while other evidence suggests sophisticated sand casting, a method often used for minting currency. They were casting thousands of bronze characters with incredible precision. When I first learned this, I couldn't believe it. The technology was identical to Gutenberg's. In fact, some historians suggest that the idea of movable type might have traveled along the Silk Road through the Mongol Empire, reaching Gutenberg's ears as a rumor of an Eastern technology.
While many Western scholars still believe Gutenberg developed his system independently, the debate over this technological transfer is growing. But the evidence for a direct link is still a matter of intense research. Most likely, Gutenberg adapted existing goldsmithing knowledge to reinvent the process in a European context. But here is where it gets complicated. Korea had the metal type. They had the inks. They had the paper. But in Korea and China, printing remained a tool of the elite, used for government documents and religious texts. In Europe, within 50 years of Gutenberg, there were millions of books in the hands of peasants, merchants, and students. What was the difference? Why did the same spark start a bonfire in Europe, but only a candle in the East? The more I looked, the stranger it got. The secret wasn't the machine. It was the very thing you are looking at right now. The printing press didn't change the world. The alphabet did. Think about the Chinese writing system. It is beautiful, complex, and ancient. But it isn't an alphabet. It is logosyllabic. To read a newspaper in China today, you need to know about 3,000 characters. To be a scholar, over 10,000. If you are a printer in 11th century China using movable type, you don't just need 26 letters. You need a warehouse. A Chinese printer had to sort through 30,000 individual carved blocks to find the one character they needed for a single sentence. It was actually faster and cheaper for them to just carve a whole wooden block for each page than to use movable type. The technology was there, but the operating system of the language made it inefficient. Now, look at Europe. To make his Bible, Gutenberg didn't stop at 26 letters. Gutenberg used nearly 300 different characters, including ligatures and abbreviations, to replicate the look of handwritten manuscripts. He included complex ligatures, where two letters are joined, and various abbreviations to ensure every line was perfectly justified. But even with approximately 290 distinct types to manage, it was still a tiny fraction of what a Chinese printer faced. He could fit every single character he needed into a manageable system of wooden trays. This is the economic revolution. Gutenberg could cast thousands of E's and T's from a single mold. Because his alphabet was so small, his type was infinitely reusable and incredibly cheap to produce. Between 1452 and 1455, Gutenberg's workshop produced an estimated 180 Bibles. But here's the kicker. Once the type was cast, the next 180 Bibles could be printed in a matter of weeks. Suddenly, the cost of information dropped to near zero. Gutenberg didn't invent printing. He invented cheap printing. The alphabet was the key that unlocked the machine's true potential. This explains why the Jikji, as brilliant as it was, didn't spark a revolution in Korea. Korea eventually created their own phonetic alphabet, Hangul, in the 1440s, the same decade as Gutenberg. It was designed specifically to make reading accessible to everyone. But despite this breakthrough, the Korean elite, the Yangbun, actively resisted Hangul for centuries, preferring the prestige of classical Chinese. The social structure didn't just favor the old ways, it suppressed the phonetic system that would have made the press truly revolutionary. In Europe, the press met a simple alphabet at exactly the right moment in history. What this taught me goes beyond just the history of books. We tend to celebrate the inventor, the lone genius who has the big idea. But history shows us that the idea is only half the battle. Technology alone doesn't change history. The ecosystem it enters matters more. The same invention can be a revolutionary force in one culture and a beautiful curiosity in another. I now understand that Gutenberg's real genius wasn't just the press. It was being the right man with the right metal in a culture that had the right alphabet to make it go viral. Next time you see a book or a newspaper or even the text on your phone, remember that you aren't just looking at the work of a German goldsmith. You're looking at a 600-year-long relay race that spanned from the caves of China to the workshops of Korea before finally finding its perfect partner in a 26-letter alphabet.
This reminds us that we celebrate inventors, but sometimes the real innovation happened centuries earlier, in a form that couldn't yet succeed. But the printing press isn't the only ancient technology we've misunderstood. I'm here to help you know the secrets history buried. What other modern invention do you think was actually invented centuries ago? Let me know in the comments. See you at the next discovery.